when I was 28 years old, right? I had just finished fighting, literally with teeth, nails, skin, and everything I had, fighting for one of my companies and the actual industry. Because at the state level, I was suing the state based on these new laws that had changed the benefits for children that were receiving therapy. And so I was on a high horse because dealing with the state, suing the state of Texas, I had to be super strong and super committed to rescuing this industry, right? And so I was on a high horse and I was on a power horse. And what that made me believe is that I knew it all and I fought so hard that I deserved it all, that it made me lose track of who I was as a woman in my marriage. Then my ego would tell me, hey, you deserve like to like be on a pedestal, right?
Because look at what you've done. Look at how hard you fought. You fought the state.
Yes. And so I started overpowering my husband at the time and his decisions, right? And
because you're like, what are you doing?
And I started undermining him. And I started being like the to-do of everything, right? Like, yo decido y yo mando. Oh, you want to do that? Okay, you know what? I'm going to do this. And so I started kind of setting the
sabotaging.
Tone. I started setting the tone, sabotaging myself in my marriage, right? But I was so hooked on my ego that one time my husband, ex-husband, he is such a gentleman. He says no bad words. He's super, super, super respectful, right? That, we had a problem at communication because since he was so respectful and so tranquilo, he was such a calm soul, right? And I was more like about the fire. I was fearless.
And you were at another level because of
and I had
fighting.
been on this other level, right? Fighting. Yeah. I couldn't engage in a conversation because I would flare up the conversation super fast. Wow. And I wanted like decisions, I can't see you that way, action, FYI. And I wanted it done now and give me an answer now, right? That he would retract from the situation and be like, you know what? I'm not going to argue with you, resolve it and let me know later. So with so many months of that, then I was like, I was being ignored, in other words, right? That one time, I sent him this song in Spanish. I was out. I was at my house with my brother-in-law and my sister, and this song came out. And that song is in Spanish. Es una canción mexicana que dice que la vida es como un columpio, que a veces está arriba y a veces está abajo. Y cuando estás arriba o abajo, like, I'm gonna let you go, or like something like that, right? And so I sent him that song. And he calls me back the next day and he says to go...
Dilo en español.
En español me dice, vas y chingas a tu madre. And I'm like, ¿qué? Que tú like me vas a decir...
Basically, go to hell.
Go to hell. But go to hell. Like, saying that in Spanish is like dissing your mother.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's just like a common Mexican slang or a bad word. And I said, ¿qué? Que tú me vas a decir a mí que yo vaya mi madre, ni madres. ¿Sabes qué? Me divorcio. Because he had already been kind of ignoring me. And
in your perspective. His perspective is he didn't want to fight.
In his perspective, he didn't want to fight. But to me, he had been like ignoring me. And I wanted to like...
fight.
I wanted that argument. That rush. I wanted that rush because I was on my high horse of, you know, who I was and what I'd done and what I'd overcome and all this stuff. My bullshit ego. And I said, ¿sabes qué? Me divorcio. And so he says, sí, pues dale gas. Like, he challenged me.
He said... You want a divorce? Fine.
Go ahead. Like, do what you got to do, right? So I was like, okay.
Now what?
So now what? Now my ballsy Perla and my ego was like, hey, you got to do
you didn't want
what you got to do. I wasn't ready for that. I wasn't even thinking about it. I was just thinking about feeding my ego. Like, you don't challenge me to nothing. Because if you challenge me, I'll fight you to the death, right? Mm-hmm. That was me back in the day, back in those days. And so I called my attorney. In the middle of a birthday party that afternoon, I said, hey, draft of my divorce. She said, what do you mean? What are you talking about? What happened? And I said, he told me chinga tu madre. He's like, Perla, but what's wrong with you? Relax. And I said, no, nobody messes with me like that, and I'm not going to take that. And so I lost myself and my ego. And my ego, losing myself in my ego at that time was literally the start of my self-destruction. Because from there, I went on to bad mistake after bad mistake after bad mistake after bad mistake. I lost friendships. I lost my family. I lost my ex-husband.
You did things that you were ashamed of.
I did things that I was very, very ashamed of. I
really want people to understand they're not alone. We all do this.
Oh yeah, we all do this. My family,
and that's because you were at a high in you were wealthy. You had everything. But your ego was yelling at you.
My ego was driving me insane. And no, at that time, if you would tell me, Perla, you're losing it, like you need to relax,
You'd be like, go to hell.
You don't know what you're talking about.